This derelict area that stands behind Aberdeen's old Salvation Army citadel was probably the site of an infamous brothel known as Maggie Creek's. Margaret Creek, the brothel owner, unfortunately was party to a terrible murder. So the area I'm standing indeed is behind the citadel, which you can see the tower of up there. And from the 1790s, this was the site of the army barracks. It was also usually for visiting regiments, but ended up being the home of the Gordon Highlanders, because it was 1792 that they were founded by the Duchess of Gordon. But of course that is another story. So the fact that you have soldiers here and you have a brothel down on Justice Street, it's not a surprise that Mistress Creek's customers were mainly soldiers, and that night was no exception. This was September of 1807. Now, the soldiers here was a visiting regiment at the time of Argyllshire Highlanders, and the boys wanted some fun, and they were actually challenged by another soldier. That was John Simpson. In fact, he was a black Caribbean, reputedly born in Barbados, and ended up being part of the 29th Regiment of Foot, which was famous for its black drummers. After the siege of Guadeloupe, 18 young black boys were presented to the general of that regiment, and thereafter were trained as drummers. So Sampson, apparently he was a big strapping guy, thinking of your 19th century Idris Elba perhaps, and he heard that the Argylls were looking for a boxing match. He walked into the garrison and offered his services. Now, apparently it was an unfair fight. Two men jumped on Simpson from behind, one clambered onto his shoulder, but Simpson was not afraid. He actually took the guy and slammed him into a wall. This resulted in the man dying instantly. Sampson fled, actually into the arms of a prostitute at Margaret Creek's for some safety. Now, the fact that the Argylls found out that the murderer of their kinsman was downstairs from the garrison in the brothel meant they were going to go and get some revenge. Now, some of them managed to get passes to get out of the barracks, because obviously they couldn't just go wandering about willy-nilly, and they got up some Dutch courage and apparently banged on the door of the brothel. Now, Mistress Creek didn't really want to let these guys in because she'd probably found out what had happened, but nevertheless they shoved their way in, and apparently Simpson had heard them coming and had run down the stairs and hidden behind the door. So when the door was slammed open, he was behind it. And inadvertently, it knocked him out. So he was lying unconscious behind the door. Two of the Argylls ran up to the bedrooms of the ladies and tried to find him. But again, you can imagine the scene. These whores basically, aye, what do you think you're looking at, pal? And of course they didn't find him. But then Sampson woke up from being temporarily knocked out and ran out into the street, and that is where they followed him, and they basically hacked him to death. It said that he was stabbed about a dozen times, but no one could tell who had carried out the fatal blow. And if you want to know more about what happened and where Sampson's murderers caught, well, you'll just have to come on the tour.